Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the place where we are creating a community discussion around all things witchy, woo woo, metaphysical, you name it. If it is alternative, we're probably going to talk about it. We're doing different deep dives, different, even some superficial conversations, because that is the 360-degree experience of being an energy worker, a witch, someone who performs in the metaphysical realm professionally. And so that said, we had a broadcast request from our lovely Bram, and it was to talk about this upcoming solar eclipse. I was trying to think back as I went over like show notes and things like that. I was trying to think if we had a solar eclipse ever during our time on the internet here, and I don't think we have. I think we've covered lunar eclipses particularly. So this will be a little bit slightly different direction. I mean, an eclipse is an eclipse, but the energies may be slightly different. And then Katrina and I have our own experiences with that. So we are here today to cover those. So if you have questions, you can throw them at us. We are not self-professed eclipse professionals, but we can navigate these questions and see what comes through, and share your experiences if you've had a particular unique experience with solar eclipses. But I said all of that to say we still have some introductions to make because not all of you know who we are. Thank you for joining us, Bram and Debs. We see you and we love you. And so who's doing all the talking right now and seems to be, in full mercurial running of the mouth? I am Dahlia Rose. I am the founder of the Conduit School, where I teach, I support others in their healing journey. I offer guidance. I offer really interesting perspectives, I think, sometimes that lead to empowerment and intuitive insights by the people that I converse with. So it is a good time all around, and I enjoy my teaching career, and I hope to change the world, here and there in the process. But I am not doing this alone.
No, I'm going to help her change the world. My name's Katrina Rasfold, and I am half of Crossroads Occult at crossroadsoccult.com. That is a business I own with my wonderful, magical, amazing husband. And we offer a wide array of magical products that we make ourselves in our home apothecary. And I also provide cleansings and spell work, and what else do I do? Cleansing, spell work, readings for clients, as well as many classes. I'm also the associate editor for Green Egg Magazine, which is the oldest pagan periodical in the world. And I also am a key component of the Green Egg blog, which is on greeneggmagazine.com. And I do a ton of writing there. I have never written so much in my life as I do for that blog. I did not see that coming, but there's a lot. I do 4 columns a week on that blog, and let me tell you. But that's me, and that's what I do. I'm also a published author and have written a few books. So if you go to Amazon.com and put in Katrina Rasfold, I am literally the only Rasfold on there. So I will come up. And one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit that you kind of hit on is I remember when I was growing up, I was probably 7 or 8 years old in Kentucky, and we had a solar eclipse. And my grandmother, who was a Pilgrim Holiness minister, was absolutely on fucking fire. She knew Jesus was coming right then, right in that second. She was packing to go, and we all ran outside. And for some reason, we didn't know an eclipse was coming. And so this was all really sort of 1800s to us. So, we go outside and you can see that the sun is getting darker and darker. And that woman was on her knees. Thank you, Jesus. And you never saw a human more pissed off and disappointed than when that sun started to come back. So, you know, and that was a rare occurrence for us. But it seems to me we have these damn things all the time now. It seems.
I had read somewhere that I think they happen every 6 months. But
It seems like that. And I remember not too long ago when we were in Grizzly Flats, we had different places. I know twice when we were in Grizzly Flats, we had them because we went to different places to look and watch the eclipse. And so, yeah, I don't think they're as rare as they used to be. And I'm sure there's science as to why, but I don't have it. On account of, like you said, not being the eclipse expert.
Right. Well, and this, aside from, well, before we get to the energy component of it, there is that, like, that human interaction with it, right? And in ancient times, to see the sun go out, you saw like magicians claiming that they were doing that, and so they should be feared, or to lose light during the day was a bad omen. In my, like, again, not being an eclipse expert, I was doing a lot of Googling. And that was one of the things that came up was typically this was a bad omen, particularly in the practices, in magical practices. Katrina has been great about informing on the lunar eclipse and how chaotic that energy is. And some of the things that I was looking at was talking about how solar eclipse energy is equally chaotic, just in a different way, and that there is concern that spells or incantations or things like that would, like, whatever the result was, would backfire. And so with that in mind, what I found interesting about some modern day witches and Wiccans who were interviewed in New Jersey is that they are taking a different approach to this particular solar eclipse. They are trying to add a positive bend to it. There was in an article citing that the one witch plans to focus on a yellow candle because this has to do with the solar plexus, and they're associating that with the sun. And in doing all of this, the idea is to share that energy on a planetary level rather than working the energy for personal reasons. And I thought that was interesting because it seems to inform this sort of I will go with the will of the universe, whatever that may be, whatever chaos is revealed or whatever comes to light. I'm going to be part of the energetic process. Seemed to be like what I pulled from their desire to send it globally rather than narrowing the focus of that energy into their own lives. And yes, Bram, this is Aries energy, and it is Mercury retrograde in Gatorade too. In Gatorade, in the microwave, all the things, right? So this is a solar eclipse in Aries. It is also a new moon in Aries, and I was able to see that solar eclipses only happen during new moons, which I thought was fascinating to have that sort of that sort of information. So yes. That's what we
when you were mentioning about being part of the energetic process, I have to jump in here with just a pet peeve of mine, which I think is part of the energetic problem. And that is this panicked fear that witches feel about something backfiring. Holy cow, I hear that all the time. That this or this will cause it to backfire. I'm going to get backlash. What's going to happen with karmic backlash on this? People are so damned fearful. And that's something I think that has been cultivated by the denigration of magical people, that there's somehow something wrong with what we do, and that if you try to manage any type of energy in a directed way, that you are at risk somehow. And, this is not a paranormal experience. This is not a supernatural experience. working magic is a natural experience. You are stepping into a natural flow. And, you don't step out into a rainstorm and go, oh, this could just all go to shit, or, whatever's happening is nature. Yeah, nature can bite you in the ass. Believe me, I'm well aware of this. But I just don't get all the fear and reticence and, oh, something different's happening. I bet it could backfire on me. Oh, for God's sakes, just settle the hell down and do your work. But as always with an eclipse or any other type of celestial magical working, we look to the physicalities of what's happening. We look to the science of what's happening now that we have such a thing. And we also look at the observable experience that we're having. And if we bring all of that together into a magical working, it's not going to backfire. It's not going to fail unless it's something you ought not have been doing in the first place. And that's really the thing with backfired magic. Y'all need to settle down as long as you're working with integrity. If you step outside of that integrity, y'all need to be having big ass conversations about backfire. But when you're working with integrity, with the magical and natural process, you have nothing to fear. So climb down off this goddamn backfire pedestal and just do your work. Step into your work and own it. And stop the worry, because the worry contaminates your energetic process. Done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like you said, there is an intention to all of these things. And if you're going to lean into fear as part of that intention, then you're probably going to materialize the reality you are hoping not to. With all the energy that's present, the Aries energy, there are some things that you can maybe consider during this process, and I am looking at notes because there was a lot. So with this being about Aries is a sign that wants to go after what it wants to go after, and is usually very clear about what it wants. Aries is not one of those signs that is going to be confused or say yes when they mean no. they are very about themselves, and in that process, the clarity is there. And so, the ability during this time to focus on them, to have that level of focus on yourself, is available for everybody and is necessary for everybody. I'm somebody that can be heard saying selfishness is okay. Self-centeredness is not, but being selfish on occasion is, I think, helpful. I think it's healing. And maybe that's because my North Node is in Aries. I have no idea, but I think having that focus, being able to tap into your heart's desires during this time, and then generating or borrowing the energy of Aries to have the courage to go after it so that you can free yourself from the things that hold you back, and unapologetically it can be a very powerful experience. And so I would be encouraging you all at this time to consider what that looks like. This is a great time for people who have an issue with being assertive to really put that foot forward. And maybe because we're also in a Mercury retrograde, maybe some of that stuff is coming up for you to process. I was talking to somebody earlier who was dealing a lot with their past right now. And I was like, well, Aries energy, you're supposed to kind of face it head on. And they were like, but it's Mercury retrograde. It's fine. I'll just let it pass. And I was like, you are missing a moment, friend. Like that's not going to bring balance in your life. And you're going to do this again some other point. But anyway, so that's a little bit about sort of the Aries energy that's going on. Did you have thoughts, Katrina?
Not on the Aries thing. I think you summed it up real well. One thing I did want to touch on that you sort of mentioned is the historical reaction to eclipses, which is just off the hook. Like I was saying, when I was growing up, we had one. you know, and this happened when I was in Kentucky. I had no memory before that or after that in Kentucky. And I was there till I was 16 of there being a solar eclipse. And so how often was this? And in relation to the lifespan of people in the past, how many would they see in their lives? And so it could be a really terrifying experience for them. And what we have to, and God help you if you were a time travel person, if you were a time traveler and you had knowledge of when eclipses were going to occur, you could write your own ticket, man. You were going to be in a good place. So the thing, and like you said, a lot of people, astronomers and the wise men would sometimes claim that they were causing this, and maybe they did have the science to track it then and could predict it and leverage that to their advantage. But you've got to figure that that's thousands of years of hysterical and manipulative, sometimes, energy wound into an eclipse. And that is stored in our collective memory. And so we're going to respond to it. So we do kind of get a reaction to those eclipse experiences because it flips the normal. So when we are going day after day after day of our birth, we are used to the sun commanding the day, the moon commanding the night, and we fall into that rhythm. We're used to the sun being male in its energy and projective and proactive, and the female being the moon that's silvery and ethereal and changing through its cycles and ruling the dark and ruling the night. And so we kind of lock in on that. So when we have an eclipse, all of that gets flipped. And suddenly it's dark in the day. And suddenly the moon has command in the day. The moon is telling the sun to shut the fuck up for a little while and be still. This is a time, when we think about it, of profound female influence, profound feminine power, divine feminine power, celestial feminine power, of the darkness overcoming the light. And so there's some paths that would say that isn't good. We can't have dark over light because light's good and light wins and blah, 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 blah. But when we are mature, thinking, magical people, we know dark is no more sinister than light. We have our yin yang, which is the dark and the light married together with a little tiny breath of each one within it. And so when we look at this flip that happens, we can leverage that in a very strong magical way by really delving into the female aspects of ourselves, our relationship to the divine, our relationship and how we enter into and engage the world, and really look at how do we want those female energies to step forward and to be prominent, and how do we want to play down that aggressiveness, which is going to be tough in an Aries dominated energy time. So it really is a lot of information coming through with this eclipse.
I like what you talked about in terms of slowing down, because some of the information that I had come across was the level of impact that this time will have, and how that will continue to have a ripple effect over the next 2 to 3 years. And it really puts a sense of what you want your intentions to be, like what will you intend to receive over the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, there will be people whose practice will be to work this in a way that is, well, I want to do and I want to have action around, and that's great. But with what you said and the awareness of the feminine energy, there's an opportunity here to really dive into, what do you want to be? There's this embodiment that can take place with the feminine energy. It doesn't have to do anything. It just has to be open to movement and flow that can happen with the energies. And so there's also some information, like we're talking about Monday, but very much like the energy of the full moon, which thank you, Bram, for bringing this point up. I didn't even think about it. You can't have a full moon during solar eclipse because the fullness of the moon is a direct relation to the sun's reflection. Hooray for science. But one of the things that's present similar to the full moon is how many days the energy of the eclipse is present. And so actually I read that the portal to the eclipse energy actually starts today, which I thought was interesting. I woke up, I felt very energized, and like, you know, all the synchronicities. And, you know, Dahlia lives by signs and symbols rather than logic. And so it was a great day. So if you all are, I say that to say, if you all are wanting to operate in your beingness now, you can start kind of harmonizing, or rather playing with different ways of being to help you make your decision all the way up to Monday, to the moment where you finally make a decision and say, this space that I'm in is where I want to be. I did a healing session with a client earlier this week, and she was like, for the first time, I'm starting to feel what it feels like to be fully myself and be home. And to me, that was like perfect symbology for what can happen and what you can embody, you know, going forward to Monday. So
that's wonderful. That's really good. I love that statement of being home. I think that's the best way I can describe when we fully actualize into who we are, and a presentation of ourselves that we can feel proud of and connected with. I think all through my life, I've had an image that I put forward in different situations that didn't always feel congruent with my core self. And when you get that in alignment, it is a feeling of coming home. It's really wonderful. You know, some of the things you were mentioning made me think about that feminine aspect that's going to be so empowered on Monday. And you're talking about that the portal opens now. It makes me think of that process of birth, which is one of the words most associated with females. The other, I think, would be nurturing. And so when we are leading up to this birth on Monday, it's natural in the last days of pregnancy to think about, what's the baby going to look like? How's my life going to change? Am I going to be able to connect with it? And all of these questions before you give birth is, what's the birth going to be like? That process of bringing this new experience into being. Is that going to be more than I can manage, or is it going to be easy? How is it going to happen? And so I think that I always am a fan of tying into the natural flows of what's happening experientially with nature. And so I think this is a great time, like you were saying, to figure out, where do we want our attention to be for the next few years? Not what do I want to change in my life necessarily, but where do I want to put my attention? Because my attention is one of my most valuable resources. We think of it as money, we think of it as love, we think of it as perseverance, but really your most valuable resource is your time and your attention, and how you're spending your days and your thought energy, and where you put it. So I would be spending the next few days considering what you want to pay attention to in your life and what you want to nurture in your life, and what has value that you want to see expand and grow as a child would, and where do you want to put your creation energies. And again, when we're having a baby, we're not always just thinking about the labor, we're thinking about what comes afterwards and how we can influence that situation, how that situation will influence us. And so we have to look beyond. This isn't just about manifestation. Manifestation is what we do all the time. This is about a dedicated decision about where our attention will focus and what we will nurture.
I think the beautiful thing about where you bringing up the focus of intention is recognizing this is a great time to recognize where we are reactive in our lives and instead of responsive. So getting up in the morning, you know, feeling like, oh my God, I have to go back to work is a reaction as opposed to a response that says, you know, I find meaning and purpose in these things. A lot of what I was reading also in terms of this time is it's a great time to go over your values once more. Um, you know, I think that the trick of our American culture is to think that you or your values will remain the same over a lifetime, and they simply won't. They can't. And so, as you become present to what is my driving motivator for this action that I'm taking or these habits that I have, you can start to regain a sense of energy and power and when you pull back from the things that just don't hold your heart anymore. And you can also start to become aware of where your parents may have educated you or fueled a desire within you that is no longer a part of what you're here to do or what you want to do even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's I think at this stage of like being in my career and what I've seen is it is more often than not that you will incarnate in a family who is opposite to what you're here to ascend to. So like seeing people who they call themselves like the black sheep because they kind of turn the family on its head. Well, you know, you were here to not conform to what the family said, and so now you continue along that way. Or a sensitive person being incarnated into a family full of dysfunction and verbal abuse. These things are not coincidences. And under the portal of a solar eclipse, you have an opportunity to kind of shine light on a dark place and nurture what you are actually supposed to be involved in, as opposed to just conforming to that which you have been assigned. So yeah.
I think that you've hit on a really important thing, which is this fixation on the past and what we needed in the past, what we didn't get in the past, how we were traumatized in the past. All of the experiences that felt formative of the past are so important to us now. And I think that because of that, we spend way too much time engaging those experiences and looking to the past rather than engaging with the present and who we are
Mm-hmm.
now. I'm really thinking about my grandfather, who was he was a big man in a lot of ways. He was an amazing, loving, caring man with this incredible heart and this incredible nurturing spirit, especially for his time. Because, I mean, you figure I was born in 61. So he was at his prime at a time when men were not known for being supportive and loving and,
Oh.
really dedicated to the well-being of other people. And he was, and again, he was a large man in so many ways. And so when I saw him the last time, which I believe was probably around 94, he was in bed and he was very elderly and very ill, and he couldn't move. He never did get out of that bed. He was in a hospital bed in his living room, and he was so frail and so tiny. I swear I could have picked him up myself and not even hardly felt it. And he would tremble a lot. And he said something that was really moving to me. He said, when I was in the Army, we used to hear that bugle blow every morning. And I would lay there and think, oh God, just give me a few more minutes in bed. Just let me just stay in the bed just a little bit longer. And he said, it's so interesting that now I would give anything to get out of this bed.
Mm.
And I think that what we have to look at when we see our discussions about how things used to be and how things are now is we have to stay engaged in the present because that is where our current needs are. We can't keep going back trying to feed that inner child over and over and over and over to the point that our current human is starving. And we have to be very clear with what our needs are right now, or it will just demand more and more of our attention to the point that we're no longer even present in
Yeah.
our life. So I think that this is an excellent time to really experience that flip that happens and really see things from a different perspective. For instance, you mentioned, oh, I've got to get up and go to work. How often do we say, oh, I get to get up and go to work? I'm one of the lucky people in this country that has a job.
Mm-hmm.
And bless your heart if you have a job you actually enjoy. But I mean, I get to wake up every morning. I get to get out of the bed. I get to make a good breakfast for myself. I get to call and talk to my sister who's still alive. All of these things that you have the privilege of doing that your future self might not get to do. We have to really lock into that gratitude place.
Absolutely. And one of the things that was coming up again in all of the reading things was the ability to heal core wounds. And I think you touched on something very important. It's that, the past carries information. And yes, there's an opportunity to reclaim energy from that place. But it seems like predominantly now there is an expectation to find answers in the past, and there's just simply not there. The answers are in the present, and you plan to move forward from there. But even saying that, I wanted to touch on Figwee's comment here because I feel like there's a shift. So Figwe was saying, "Oh man, I'm definitely the opposite of my family. I have found that most Black sheep are people who are here to break cycles of generational trauma and abuse, and I am behind you 100%." And over these last couple of years, probably at least maybe within the last 5 years or so, I've become present to the awareness that we still have choice. Like, it sounds kind of crazy to say that only in the last couple of years I've come to that awareness and have been sharing that with people. And I'm interested to know your take on it, Figwe, if you're still with us. That even if you were born to break cycles of generational trauma and abuse, you get to choose if you are willing to do that on behalf of your family. Separating, and I guess what I'm saying is a separation from doing your own personal healing work. Obviously, you don't want to stay in the muck and the mire of that. But I often hear people who say, well, I'm here to break my family's generational trauma and abuse, feel a sense of responsibility for the ancestors that came before them, or even the living people that are still playing out those cycles. They feel almost like a sense of responsibility or a compulsion to redirect those people and educate them and this and that. And it can often cause more trauma. And so I feel like there's this space where you can say, no, I'm not going to be the one. I give this responsibility back to you. I know in my healing sessions, when we do a little bit of burning and release work, I invite the ancestors to come and heal themselves because they have that opportunity. And to remove that responsibility from the person that I'm working with because of choice. And so I bring all of that home to say this portal may be one where part of your self-nurturing process, part of embodying that feminine energy that's coming from the moon, that's being magnified at that time, may be the decision to say, I'm good, I'm done. Like, I tried and I'm stepping onto a new timeline, new portal, however you want to phrase it, but not my monkey, not my circus. And I am going to focus on elevating who I am and what I am in this life. And if you all benefit, great, but I won't be playing an active role in such things. And so I wanted to offer that
I
as an
love that.
opportunity. And I'm grateful to Figui for bringing that to the floor.
That's wonderful. And I always remember a portal is a door to change. That's the whole nature of a portal. So step through it when it's there. And, what little research I have done has shown me my ancestors were assholes. And I'm not willing to shoulder all of their karmic debt and all of their errors and all of the things they did, whether it was cultural or whether it was ignorance or whether it was willfulness or whatever it was. That isn't mine to carry, and I won't. And it took me a long time to get there, but I am having a hard enough time managing my own bullshit without going into their stuff and what they did and what motivated them. So I've had to step through that portal and make that declaration that I'm going to be responsible for me. To some degree, I'm going to be responsible for my children and what they bring to the world because I brought them into the world. But I'm not going to make them responsible for anything I did.
Right.
So I think that that's a huge step in forward motion. And a lot of times, toxic new agey stuff will make you feel like you've got to bear all of the burden of your ancestors and everything they did. And Lord help us if that's the case, because I don't think any of us have descended from a line of pure intentions and kindness and compassion.
Right. Absolutely not. And just to highlight here what Debs was saying, to this is a beautiful thing, and as long as you're operating in choice, right, then we have an opportunity to move forward in balance. So thank you, Figui, for answering. So Figui was saying, I absolutely agree with that facet of choice. You do have the choice to try to bring those living people out into the light, or you have the choice to do your own work to be a better ancestor for your future generations. I think this is also a choice of creation in the embracing of found family as well. Oh, I love found family. Thank you for bringing that point. Found family can be so powerful, and I think that the third choice can be to break the chains by separating yourself out to heal through community. I think there is really something to be said. Um, and I think there's more, but I can't see the rest of the comments. So I'm sorry about that, Figui. But yes, I'm a big promoter of creating your own family in this life. And if that includes the biological ones, then wonderful. And if not, then oops. I mean, you cannot make people participate in your life in safe ways. Boundaries are not meant to force people into particular ways of being. So I love the concept of found family when you find them. Obviously, it's a tough time beforehand. So I don't mean for that to be an easy process.
So I found something from the Hopi Cultural Preservation Office, allegedly. Now, Abraham Lincoln may have written this on the internet for all I know, so I can't give to the validity of it. But I found it interesting, and it pertains specifically to the eclipse, and it is a different take than what you and I have put forth in our analysis, our educated and experienced analysis that we've given today. And it says, Hopi belief reminds us that the eclipse is not taboo, but teaches us about respect. It's as simple as not to eavesdrop on two people while they're in an important discussion. I take exception with that. I'm going to eavesdrop if it's about me. The sun and moon will, and there's a Hopi word here that I'm not going to attempt and offend anybody, will piggyback on each other to advise or talk on the state of life that we're in, the good and the not so good, what state the world is in, or how the life is progressing today for not only humans, but also animals, trees, and all living things. Therefore, they say, give the sun and the moon during an eclipse respect. by giving them their moment of privacy to meet and talk. After they do their duty and conversate, they will part ways and continue to lead us daily throughout the night, day and night. So basically, what they're saying is this intercourse that we see of sun and moon that happens is a private conversation. It's inner court meeting. It has nothing to do with us, and we need to back off and let them do it. So I think that's an interesting perspective of, hey, the grown-ups are talking up here. You can't seem to go play.
That leads to one other thing that I found, where there was this, like, you can intend all you want, and you don't have to be so active about doing all the things, like trusting that whatever needs to play out based on this portal will play out, is what's going to happen. I mean, we've had a show or two on the concept of why isn't my magic working, and this large portal energy, like Katrina said, where the adults are talking, they may be talking about how you want this thing that is not good for you, or not part of your soul's plan, or etc., and all the reasons that you'll never really know. And so I love that phrasing of the adults are talking. As you enter this space, you can ask your parents for stuff. Doesn't mean you'll get it.
And another thing I like about that is, we do, and we're going to take the moon and the sun for granted. Now, someday that sun isn't going to be there anymore, probably not in our lifetime, but eventually it's likely to happen. But we just believe that every day that sun's going to be there, and every night that moon is going to go through its cycles, and we're going to see it where it is in its process. But the lunar eclipse, or excuse me, the solar eclipse specifically, is a time that reminds us that this is bigger than we are. There is nothing we can do to stop that solar eclipse from happening. And so it shows us that we're tiny, that we don't have that power. And a lot of times with technology and advancements we've made, we tend to start to think we're too big for our britches here. And this really puts us in a place of just being humans, just being a species that lives on this spinning rock that's having an experience. And so there are still things that are bigger than we are, and they're going to have a talk. And we can be, we can be, what's my word? We can have the hubris to believe that it's about us, but who knows? I mean, we are the macrocosm and the macrocosm. So whatever they're talking about, it ain't our little kid business. It's grown up talk.
Right. So, I have respect for the sun and the moon, but I'm definitely going to be eavesdropping on what they're talking about.
No doubt. Even though the Hopis warned us against it, I think I might be into it.
Yeah.
But, maybe what we can also do is officially eavesdrop, go into some meditation during that time, and say, okay, what wisdom do the sun and the moon have for me as they discuss? Obviously me, because that's the most important thing in the cosmos right now. What illumination can you give me? Which brings me to the way that I operate with an eclipse. And I do this with the solar eclipses, and I do this with the lunar eclipses, because you're going to see the same thing, basically. You're going to see your primary celestial body blocked out, either by the earth or by the moon, however it transitions. But the way that I work is I go very literal. Now, when we are experiencing a year, we know that it gets darker gradually until we reach a certain point, and then it gets lighter, and then it starts to get darker. It contracts, it expands on the light. And we know that the moon gets smaller and smaller and smaller till it goes away, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's full. We also know, because of science, that none of that is real. All of that is perspective based on what we physically see and our position on the spinning rock. And so we know it's all about perspective. If anything, that's what it teaches us, is perspective is everything. But what we see is that contracting and expanding. And so I go literally for the light and the dark and the contrast between those two. So as the eclipse is occurring, we're having an increase in darkness, more and more and more. And to me, that is about, what can I hide in that darkness? What do I want to push away? What do I want to banish into the darkness so that nobody sees it, so that I don't see it, so that it goes away? And as the light begins to come back, I'm about, what do I want to reveal? What do I want to bring to light? What do I want to show the world? What do I want to see? So it's less about manifestation and more about the physicality of light. And I do the same thing with the full moon, except that I believe that when you're closing out the sun, like I said, there is more, it's darker, I think, because the moon is the sign of the night and the night is taking over the sun. So you've got more darkness, whereas, you know, otherwise you've got a little bit more light. So I tend to work in that direction. And I was a little nervous talking about this because the box I work in for the eclipse is so tiny. And that's what I do. I will be adding the meditation of the listening into the adult conversation.
Yes.
However, I do really just work with light and dark during the eclipses, and that being a unique time to really shed some light on things or really push things into the dark in a big way.
Yeah, those unresolved, like, well, maybe not unresolved, but like those negative mindsets that hold you back. Why not bury those? I came across something. I probably said that like 16 times during this show, but I wanted to ask you. You work with the cycles of the year, and you talk about planting seeds in the winter time or fall, in the fall.
Spring, we plant in spring.
You blend. Okay. So maybe this does line up, because there was there was phrasing around planting intentions, and it made me think about some of the rituals you've mentioned before, and like taking seeds and actually putting them in the ground for them to grow. Is there anything about the eclipse and the way that you work with light and dark that you would not do that or use that practice for?
No. And we just look at it from the perspective of, we planted in the spring, our intentions, and often people are starting right now, even though it's snowing outside my house right now. People have started putting in their gardens and planting things there. And you wouldn't stop that process just because an eclipse happens.
Interesting.
So we don't really see it as significant to the overarching goals that we have. So we are planting long-term goals when we plant. Now, we have what's called right now magic, and that's for when you want something right now. And so we do that usually with the moon cycles or the timing of the clock, because as you know, from the bottom of the clock up, you manifest, and from the top of the clock down, you banish. And so we pick the times, and we pick the time of the moon just to manifest things like, I need to get my light bill paid, or I need to fix my relationship with my mama right now, and it can't wait to harvest, or things that we really need immediate help with. Those are the smaller magics or the more immediate magics. What we're doing for the year is about long-term change, big things that we want to change in our lives, moving to a different place, getting a different job, adjusting to a different partner, or finding a different relationship, and changing something significant about us that we know won't happen overnight. So those are the big long-term things. So really an eclipse it might shed information about that or give us insight, but we're not going to change the planting because of it.
Okay. Excellent.
Does that help?
It does help, because there was, like, alongside the planting, you're helping me to also realize that that manifestation process, it seems to be that uh, planting during the new moon and seeing its manifestation come to light in the full moon is there's a quickness to planting during the solar eclipse as well.
Right.
And I think even in what we're talking about, there's still a place to kind of be and receive. Like if you're planting those seeds in your soul, you become the thing that you are attempting to manifest. And so it's like, I'm going to receive the energy for this to happen, or I'm talking to if you're going to use plants, which I was like, do I need a new plant from Lowe's? And, if you're going to take those sort of plants and have them grow under the light of all of this, there's an opportunity to speed up. So when you went into Writ Now magic, it made sense for this portal that we're talking about. So thank you for that.
Sure. And we limit our planting to just that year cycle. The moon work, we don't consider planting. Eclipse magic, we don't consider planting, because that's not how nature works.
Sure.
That's just spell work to us. And that's the only time we use that analogy, is with the annual plantings that we do. But yeah, this would be great for some Writ Now magic. And another thing that's specific about the eclipse is similar to blue moon energy. What we do in blue moons, which is the 13th moon of the year, which means 1 month out of the year at least, we're going to have 2 moons, 2 full moons. And so the second is called the blue moon. That's where we get that phrase, once in a blue moon, because it is rarer than the other moons. And so we ask for the special asks at that time. What do we want that is unlikely to happen? And so that's our kind of special token time, where we can ask for something we just know is a long shot. And I think the eclipse magic is similar, because it happens so rarely that there is an energy of it being a very special time. So it's kind of like when you're a kid, you're more likely to get something if you ask for it 2 days before your birthday than if you ask it, 2 days before payday.
Right.
Was strapped. So it's just, kind of got that specialness to it. So it's a good time for your really super special ask, where you're like, look, I know this is a long shot, but it'd be really cool if.
With everything that we've talked about, I think we've created something that allows for a plan forward. In everything that has been shared, I think that there is something for everybody. If you feel this compulsion to commit to action, or to be doing things, that slow down space is for you. If you are already in a slow down space, then it can be navigating, what it is that you're going to embody. There's a lot of talk around relationships and connections around this full moon too. So you can be evaluating those, like Phoebe was saying here, about there being something about healing humanity on a larger scale through the foundation of found family and community. So no matter where you are, what you practice, in everything that we've talked about, there is something here for you to apply to the concepts of this eclipse. And then there's also the fact that you can just sit and enjoy it. Like, at the end of the day, if you don't want to meditate, if you don't want to be interactive, if you don't want to be responsive to what's happening, you can just kick back and see what happens. Maybe life is good and this is not one of those planetary events that's going to touch you or shake up your life. So
one of the things I would interject quickly about the idea of found family and the value of that on humanity at large is, I believe a lot of the times when we seek out found family that we're really going to collect around us, that's our tribe, they're usually going to be people who are as good as or better than we are. Rarely do we seek out somebody who's more of a shitbag than we are. And we'll go back to that old Bible verse of, whenever 2 or more of you are gathered in my name, there's love. And I think that anytime we get like minds together who are working to be better people, when we get more good people talking to each other and interacting, we heighten that energy of love and compassion and purpose, positive purpose in the world. And I exclude all these people that get together just to create chaos and denigrate other people because they're their own found family of their own. They're like the worst case scenario of found family. But when people find family because their family is not encouraging their love and development and growth, and we seek that out in other people, that lifts everybody up. And so that helps the aggregate of humanity by the gathering of those people in solidarity.
Yes. So if you find yourself going to a gathering, I mean, I'm sure there's events happening on the 8th. I think it'd be beautiful to bring in that piece of what Katrina is talking about here, just as like a little add-in. I mean, there's so much that you can ask for and do and be, and then you can throw in this piece of found family in there to enhance what's going on. So thank you for that, Katrina. As always, we are going to leave you guys to ponder these concepts. And thank you so much to Bram for this awesome topic, because not only did we get to educate ourselves, I also found some really cool information. And then, of course, learning from Katrina is always a feast when it happens. And I feel like we ate today between all the information that was shared. So keep those comments coming. Share stories. We look forward to hearing about it, not next week, but the week after. So we will see you on April 18th. But until next time, bye for now.